212. Technical difficulties abound, but we are cutting through the red tape, let me tell you.
Yes.
As per regular, we have Mr. Casey Green joining us. He is our technical guru helping us through the storm clouds of problems today, but we're getting through it. Also joining us from the West Coast, Mr. Patrick Green joins us. How are you today, sir?
I am pretty green. Yes.
Yes, indeed, cool. Mr. Patrick Connor, of course. But we are going to
actual events and results.
Oh, there we go. So we've got some volume now,
including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC.
So it's coming on my screen.
During the question.
So you've got the audio, and I've got the
portion of today's call. Please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Please press star one now if you would like to join the question queue.
For the questions.
But before we jump into Q&A, Elon has some opening remarks.
Oh,
Elon?
These are always good.
Yeah.
So to recap, Q2 2021 was a record quarter.
What happened to the play?
On many levels. We achieved record production, deliveries, and surpassed over $1 billion in GAAP net income for the first time in Tesla history.
$1 billion.
Like to congratulate everyone at Tesla for an amazing job. This is really an incredible milestone. It also seems that public sentiment towards EVs is at an inflection point. And at this point, I think almost everyone agrees that electric vehicles are the only way forward. Regarding supply chain, while we're making cars at full speed, the global chip shortage situation remains quite serious. For the rest of this year, our growth rate will be determined by the slowest part in our supply chain, which is there are a wide range of chips that are at various times the slowest part in the supply chain. It's worth noting that if we had everything else, if we had vast numbers of vehicles and cells, we would not be able to make them. Everything except the chips, we wouldn't be able to make them. The chip supply is fundamentally the governing factor on our output. It is difficult for us to say how long this will last because we don't have. This is out of our control essentially. It does seem like it's getting better, but it's hard to predict. In fact, even achieving the output that we did achieve was only due to an immense effort from people within Tesla. We were able to substitute alternative chips and then write the firmware in a matter of weeks. It's not just a matter of swapping out a chip. You also have to rewrite the software. So it was an incredibly intense effort of finding new chips, writing new firmware, integrating with the vehicle, and testing in order to maintain production. And I'd also like to thank our suppliers who work with us. And there've been many calls, midnight, 1 a.m., just with suppliers in resolving a lot of the shortages. So thanks very much to our suppliers. Let's see, in terms of FSD subscription, we were able to launch Full Self-Driving subscription last month, and we expect it to build slowly but then gather a lot of momentum over time. Obviously, we need to have the Full Self-Driving build widely available for it really to take off at a high rate. And,
yeah, definitely.
The button.
Making a lot of progress there.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I think FSD subscription will be a significant factor probably next year. With regard to Giga Texas and Giga Berlin, we're actually doing this earnings call from Giga Texas, so we're in the factory right now doing
look at that
earnings call.
Woohoo!
And the team has made incredible progress here. You can see the pictures online, and see that there's basically.
Yeah, Casey, can you share those photos? They're in the investor deck. They are pretty cool.
And there's a large, a mostly complete large factory a year later.
We can share in another screen share. So if you want to pull the pictures, we can keep the audio from this and shrink it down and show the pictures instead.
Great work in Berlin, Brandenburg, with the team there. So we expect to be producing the sort of new
that, of course, is Elon's dog.
In both factories, in limited production.
Actually,
there we go.
It took the sound off.
Oh yeah, go back. We'd rather have the sound than my screen share.
And the rate of growth of production goes as fast as the least lucky and dumbest of those 10,000 things. And a bunch of them are not even in our control. So it's like, it's insanely difficult. I'm fond of saying that prototypes are easy and production is hard. And arguably the really remarkable thing that Tesla has done is not to make an electric car or to be a car startup, because there have been hundreds of car startups in the United States and outside the United States. So the thing that's remarkable is that Tesla didn't go bankrupt in reaching volume production. That's the amazing part, because everyone else did. Because they all thought the prototype or the idea was the hard part, and it is not. It is trivial by comparison with actual production. So it's always worth noting that of all the American car companies, there are only two that have not gone bankrupt, and that is Ford and Tesla. So, you know, the seeds of defeat are sown on the day of victory, and we must be careful that we do not do that. So often, if you look at history, so often the seeds of defeat are sown on the day of victory. We will endeavor not to make that the case at Tesla. So let's see. The Model Ys in Texas and made in Texas and Berlin will look very much like the Model Ys we currently make, but there are substantial improvements in the difficulty of manufacturing. So, for example, the Model Y made here and in Berlin will have a cast front body and a cast rear body, whereas the one in California has a cast rear body but not a cast front body. We're also aiming to do a structural pack with 4680s cells, which is a mass reduction and a cost reduction, and but we're not counting on that as the only way to make things work. We have sort of a backup plan with a non-structural pack and 2170s essentially. So, but at scale production, we obviously want to be using 4680s and structural pack. From a physics standpoint, this is the best architecture. And from an economic standpoint, it is the lowest cost way to go. So the lightest, lowest cost. But there's a lot of new technology there, so it is difficult to predict with precision when does it work and when do you reach scale production. And Drew's going to talk a bit more about the 4680 production.
This will be interesting.
Yeah. So we are making great progress on the 4680 cells. But there is a tremendous amount of innovation that we're packing into that 4680 cell, and so it's not simply a sort of minor improvement on state of the art. There are, and we went through this on the battery cell day, really dozens of, half a dozen major improvements and dozens of small improvements. So I think it will be great, but it's difficult to say when the last of the technical challenges will be solved. So in conclusion, our team continues to make huge efforts to make our factories run at full speed, which is very difficult. We have had some factory shutdowns due to part shortages, and we hope those will be relieved in the coming weeks and months. And we're making great progress on full self-driving. Some of the progress is not easy to see because it is at sort of a foundational software level. And so then it ends up being sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation. But over time, if you do 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and keep going, you do move forward. I'm highly confident that the cars will be capable of full self-driving. If they have a full self-driving computer and the cameras, I'm confident that they will be able to drive themselves with a safety level substantially greater than that of the average person. Once again, thanks to all of our employees who are making this a breakthrough year for Tesla and an incredible quarter. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. And we have some follow-up remarks from Zachary Kirkhorn.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, and thanks, Elon. Just to reiterate, Q2 was a great quarter for the Tesla team with strong improvements across the business. In particular, auto gross profit and margin, excluding credits, increased substantially. This was primarily driven by better cost optimization across our factories, good execution against our cost reduction plans, as well as increases in production and delivery volume. There was some benefit from pricing action, mostly in North America. However, it was small in the context of the other contributors. Note that the Model S and X program was at a slight loss for the quarter due to the relatively low volume. And supply chain challenges, including expedites, continue to provide cost headwinds. Additionally, it's encouraging to see the progress made on profitability within our energy and services and other businesses. While there's some benefit to looking at our progress quarter over quarter, I find it more helpful to look at progress over a slightly long-term horizon. Over the last 2 years, our vehicle delivery volumes have more than doubled. This volume increase was made possible by a steady decrease in ASPs of more than 10%, driven by a roadmap to increase affordability and shifting mix towards our more affordable vehicles. Yet over that same period of time, our auto gross margin, excluding credits, has increased nearly 10 percentage points, to our highest yet since the introduction of Model 3. This is only possible because our average cost per vehicle has reduced by more than the reduction in average price. This is a remarkable achievement in the context of the volume growth and ASP reduction as mentioned, and a testament to the hard work by the Tesla team. Additionally, OPEX as a percentage of revenue has declined, and in particular SG&A, representing the work we've done to become more efficient as we scale the company while still making the required R&D investments to support our future. As a result, our GAAP operating margins have risen from negative to double digit, in line with what we have guided. By managing our overhead costs and driving higher volumes, our P&L is benefiting from the marginal profitability of each incremental unit. Or said differently, we are recognizing the benefits of scale and improved fixed cost absorption. With strong operating cash flows and cash balance, we are putting that cash to use. CapEx continues to tick up, primarily driven by capacity investments in Austin, Berlin, and Shanghai. Additionally, each quarter we are using our cash to retire legacy debt, which was taken on at a time when interest rates and company risk were much higher than in today's environment. As I've mentioned before, our 2021 volumes will skew towards the second half of the year as we push for continued sequential increases in volume. Despite the great work so far managing the instability of the supply chain, these challenges remain and are unfortunately increasing in pain with a higher volume. As we work through the uncertainty, we want to ensure we do our best to manage customer wait times, as well as the impact these interruptions have on our employees and costs. And as Elon mentioned, volume growth will be determined by part availability, as we have the factory capacity ready and are in a strong demand position. I'm excited to see the progress made by the Tesla team as we continue building the business and strengthening our financials. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Zach. And now let's go.
He almost said Wright's Law. He came really close.
The first question from Robert M. is, Tesla's website still says Cybertruck production is expected to begin in late 2021. Can Tesla share more details on the current status of the Cybertruck and confirm if production is still expected?
No, not a production of hats, Patrick.
Cyber hats.
Lars, do you want to?
Sorry, we cut out there for a second. Yeah, the Cybertruck is currently in its alpha stages. We finished the basic engineering architecture of the vehicle. with the Cybertruck, we're redefining how the vehicle is to be made. As Elon said, it carries much of the structural pack and large casting designs of the Model Y being built in Berlin and Austin. Obviously, those take priority over the Cybertruck, but we are moving into the beta phases of Cybertruck later this year, and we'll be looking to ramp that in production in Giga, Texas, after Model Y is up and going.
Model Y is the priority.
Still number one.
The extraordinary difficulty of ramping production of large manufactured items. The risk of being repetitive, it's actually easy to make prototypes or sort of handle small volume production, but anything produced at high volume, which is really what's relevant here, is it's going to move as fast as the slowest of the, say, rough order of magnitude, 10,000 unique parts and processes. And so you could have 9,999, but just one is missing. I mean, we were missing, for example, like a big struggle this quarter was the module that controls the airbags and the seat belts. And obviously, you cannot ship a car without those.
Kind of important.
That limited our production severely worldwide in Shanghai and in Fremont. So.
Add a little buffering here. Yeah, during the chip shortage, it's amazing that they did as well as they did.
Well, especially because they were actually rewriting the software and other things because they were taking on new chips.
Right. Yes.
So it's creative thinking that they weren't just waiting for the same chip to show up, but instead, let's get some chips that do things a little bit differently, rework the software so we still get to our end goal.
Right, and when you're vertically integrated and you have the software team, instead of just some supplier that says, no, we can't get that.
It is quite a trial dealing with all of the constraints of scaling a large manufactured object. I think it may be the case that Tesla is scaling. I think we might be the fastest in history ever for scaling a large manufactured object. I think maybe the Model T would have been comparable back in the day, the Ford Model T. And probably the internet knows the answer, but I think we may be scaling a large manufactured object
Siri.
at the fastest rate in history. Or I'd like to know who did it faster, so we can learn from them. So it's worth just noting that, in the grand scheme of things, it's not bad.
Yeah, all the other car companies took 100 years to get to big volume.
Heavy use of cell capacity. So we've got to make sure we have the cell capacity for those two vehicles. Or it's kind of pointless. We can make a small number of vehicles, but the effective cost if you make a small number of vehicles is insane. Like they would literally cost, $1 million a piece, or more. There's a reason why you do things in volume production, which is to get the economies of scale that get the costs down. But we are looking at a pretty massive increase in cell availability next year. But it's not like in January 1. It comes through. It ramps up through the course of next year. But even without Tesla's Hello? Okay.
No, that wasn't us.
At least it's not just us today. Goodness.
We believe our suppliers will be able to deliver about twice as much cell output in next year as this year. Drew, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. Given concerns over cells bottlenecking growth, our target is to grow cell supply ahead of the 50% year-on-year growth targets of the vehicle business, and also enable increased energy storage deployments.
Yeah.
Our cell suppliers are tracking to double their production in 2022.
Yeah.
Exponential growth.
If you have a target of a certain number, that doesn't mean it happens like as sure as night follows day. It's a target. So if there is some calamity in the world that interrupts the supply chain, then it will be less. But the contracts that we have with cell suppliers call for roughly a doubling of cell supply to Tesla in 2022. And we have to juggle these exponential, it's a whole bunch of exponential graphs sort of overlaid on top of each other. And small changes in where you are on the x-axis of time can quite substantially change the area under the curve. So what we're thinking of doing is like, depending on, it's basically overshooting on cell supply for vehicles, and then as we have, say, excess cell supply in 1 month or another, then routing that cell output to the Megapack and Powerwall. All by the same token, if we're prioritizing vehicle production, if there's a shortage of cell output for some reason, then we will throttle down Megapack and Powerwall production. So that something's got to give, basically.
Or if there's a disruption to vehicle production,
yes,
we have an outlet for the cell capacity.
Yes, exactly. There's a tremendous amount of inertia in the supply chain. So if we say to a supplier, we want you to double cell output, well, even doing that in a year is very difficult. And then that system has a tremendous amount of momentum. It is like a flotilla of super tankers. It's insane.
Speaking of which, from a raw materials perspective, we also have long-term contracts to secure our supply chain to also enable this growth. So we're not just looking at the suppliers, but upstream from there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is more flotillas.
Yeah, exactly. As mentioned, things will move as fast as the slowest part of the entire supply chain, which goes all the way back to raw materials, lithium and nickel and that kind of thing. And there's sometimes misperception that Tesla uses a lot of cobalt, but we actually don't. Apple uses, I think, almost 100% cobalt in their batteries and cell phones and laptops, but Tesla uses no cobalt in the iron phosphate packs, and almost none in the nickel-based chemistries. So, on a weighted average basis, we might use 2% cobalt compared to the Apple's 100% cobalt. Anyway, so it's just
be interesting to know what the percentage is.
Basically, have zero cobalt in the future. So, I do. It's maybe worth noting. I think probably there is a long-term shift more in the direction of iron-based lithium-ion cells rather over nickel.
Wasn't this a question about when the Cybertruck comes out?
It started that way.
But might as well support iron. The possibility taken for granted. But iron-based cells, lithium-ion cells, and nickel-based lithium-ion cells, I think probably we'll see a shift. My guess is probably to 2/3 iron, 1/3 nickel, or something on that order.
There we go.
Yeah, it's awesome they're driving the whole market.
Good because there's plenty of iron in the world. There's an insane amount of iron. But there's much less nickel, and there's way less cobalt. So it is good for relieving the long-term scaling to move to iron-based cells mostly. And I think long-term, possibly there's a good chance that all stationary storage, that is Powerwall and Megapack, move to iron. This is most likely the case since you do not need to transport it, and there's less of volume and mass constraint for stationary storage. So then nickel would be for really for long-range road transport, ships and aircraft and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Let's go to the second question from retail, which is, Elon has said that Tesla will be opening up the supercharger network to other EVs later this year. Can you share some more details on how this will be structured? Will this be a select brands, or will they contribute to the growth of this network?
Yeah, we're currently thinking it's a real simple thing where you just download the Tesla app and you go to a supercharger and you just indicate which stall you're in. So you plug in your car, even if it's not a Tesla, and then you just access the app and say, turn on the stall that I'm in for how much electricity. And this should basically work with, I think, almost any manufacturer's cars. There will be a time constraint. So if the charge rate is super slow, then somebody will be charged more because the biggest constraint at the superchargers is time, how occupied is the stall. And we'll also be smarter with how we charge for electricity at the superchargers. So, rush hour charging will be more expensive than off-hours charging because there are times when the superchargers are empty and times when they're jam-packed. And so it makes sense to have some time-based discrimination on
Yeah, we've been doing that, and it's been working, and people respond, and it helps with utilization.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we're in Europe and China and most parts of the world, it's the same connector for everyone. So this is a fairly easy thing to do. Developed our own connector, which, in my opinion, is actually the best connector. It's small and light, and looks good. There's no standard. So we developed our own connector, which, in my opinion, is actually the best connector. It's small and light, and looks good. So
is that a repeat?
An adapter is needed to.
We had a glitch in the matrix.
Black Cat by twice.
America. But people can buy this adapter, and we anticipate having it available at the superchargers as well, if people don't sort of steal them or something.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So, but that is just that's a constraint on the North American thing.
Yeah.
That's basically a vestige of history. But I think we do want to emphasize that it is our goal is to support the advent of sustainable energy. It is not to create a walled garden and use that to bludgeon our competitors, which is sometimes used by some companies.
I think it's also important to comment that increasing the utilization of the network actually reduces our costs, which allows us to lower charging prices for all customers, makes the network more profitable, allows us to grow the network faster. So it's a good thing there.
I heard Omar say that on Sunday.
And no matter what, we're going to continue to aggressively expand the network capacity, increasing charging speeds, improving the trip planning tools to protect against site congestion using dynamic pricing, as Elon mentioned.
Yeah.
And just continue to focus on minimum wait time for all customers.
Yeah, obviously, in order for this to be, for the superchargers to be useful to other car companies, cars, we need to grow the network faster than we're growing vehicle output, which is not easy. We're growing vehicle output at a hell of a rate. So superchargers need to grow faster than vehicle output. So this is a lot of work for the supercharger team. But it is only useful in the grand scheme of things. It's only useful to the public if we're able to grow faster than Tesla vehicle output.
And now faster than all vehicle output.
That is our goal.
All EV output.
Yeah,
Thank
combined.
you very much.
Yeah.
And the third question is, Elon said 4680 cells aren't reliable enough for vehicles. Is this referring to cycle life, degradation, or something else? Please update us on progress of 4680s and what still needs to be done to make them reliable enough for vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is not. We'll definitely make the 4680 reliable enough for vehicles, and I think are at the point where in limited volume it is reliable enough for vehicles.
Yes.
Again, going back to limited production is easy, or prototype production is easy, but high volume production is hard. There are a number of challenges in transitioning from sort of small scale production to a large volume production. You know, not to get too much into the weeds of things, but right now we have a challenge with basically what's called calendaring, or basically squashing the cathode material to a particular height. So it just goes through these rollers and gets squashed like pizza dough, basically, but very hard pizza dough. And it's denting the calendar rolls. This is not something that happened when the calendar rolls were smaller, but it is happening when the calendar rolls are bigger. So just like we're like, okay, weren't expecting that.
Yeah. It's not a like science problem. It's an engineering problem. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when. And the team is focused on resolving these limiting processes as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, and on the reliability side, as Elon mentioned, we have successfully validated performance and the lifetime durability of the 4680 cells produced at Cato. And we're continuing ongoing verification of that reliability. We're actually accruing over 1 million equivalent miles on our cells that we produce every month in our testing activities.
Million-mile battery. Woohoo!
It's very clear we want high-quality cells for all of our customers. And yeah, we're just focused on the unlucky limiting steps in the facility, and with the engineers focused on those few steps remaining, we're going to break through as fast as possible.
Meantime, we have a massive amount of equipment on order and arriving for the high volume cell production in Austin and Berlin, and but obviously, given what we've learned with the pilot plant, which is in Fremont, which is really quite a big plant by most standards, we will have to modify a bunch of that equipment. So, you know, it won't be able to start like immediately. But it seems like, I mean, Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but like we think most likely we will hit an annualized rate of 100 gigawatt hours a year sometime next year.
We'll have all the equipment installed
to
accomplish 100 gigawatt hours, and it's possible that by the end of the year we will be at an annualized rate of 100 gigawatt hours by the end of the year.
I mean, my guess is more likely than not, about 50% of reaching 100 gigawatt hours a year by the end of next year on an annualized rate, something like that.
Yep.
But it could shift by a little bit. So but it's like nothing, as Drew mentioned, it's nothing fundamental.
No.
Just a lot of work.
Yeah, and even to the large roller question, Elon, right? Like on the anode side, the large rollers work great, no concerns, and so we're just learning as we go. And the nice thing about having that facility, you know, on the fast track like we had it, and we talked about it at Battery Day, was really de-risking the big factories here. That's what we've done, and we've learned a lot. And with each successive iteration, the ramp up and the equipment installation will be faster and more seamless.
Yeah, that was smart.
All right, thank you very much. And the last question from retail is from Emmett. Can Elon do an interview with one of our YouTube channels once or twice a year? I would nominate David Lee on Investing or Rod Maurer's Tesla Daily
or the
channel,
Tesla Life.
First possible.
Just say you'll think on it and move on.
Yeah, I'll do an interview. I mean, just bear in mind, like, if I'm doing interviews, then I can't do actual other work, you know, so it's not, you know.
Say you're too busy, Elon. That's fine.
Only so much time in the day, so.
He manages to get plenty of these interviews in.
I won't do it annually, but I'll do it once. I think also, like, this is the.
I became the boss so people would stop putting stuff on my schedule.
I wouldn't say the last time I'll do earnings calls, but this is the. I will no longer be default doing earnings calls.
You may not be here.
Obviously, I'll do the annual shareholder meeting, but I think going forward, I will most likely not be on earnings calls unless there's something really important that that I need to say.
Usually it's the CFO, so that makes sense.
Okay,
They're going to transition to be like other
institutional
companies.
Questions. The first one, and we covered a lot of this already. Can you please update us on timelines for the start of production of Berlin and Austin, Model Y, Cybertruck, and the Semi? Do you expect the ramp of Cybertruck to be as difficult as it is a new process?
I think Cybertruck ramp will be difficult because it's such a new architecture. I mean, it's going to be a great product. It might, I think, be our best product ever, but there's a lot of fundamentally new design ideas in Cybertruck. Nobody's ever really made a car like this before, a vehicle like this before, so there'll probably be challenges.
No one's ever made a hat like that before.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think question 2 and question 3 we can skip, given we have already addressed it. I'll go to question 4. In 5 years' time, how much faster, better could you be at manufacturing capacity expansion using cut and paste? And what are the biggest issues you need to solve to get to that rate?
Well, like I said, I think we might be the fastest growing company in history for any large manufactured item. So those who have not actually been involved in a manufacturing ramp have just no idea how painful and difficult it is. It's like, you know, you got to eat a lot of glass, and for our manufacturing ramp, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if you look at the expansion we've done in Shanghai, you know, that factory was built in less than a year and ramped in, you know, 5 to 6 months to full volume. When you consider
longer than that. Took longer than that, about a year.
And when you consider cut and paste, we've repeated that, you know, in Fremont and whatever. But now with Berlin and Austin, we have new factories and new designs, and so there's always challenges, as you said, Elon, with new designs and ramping that. But I think having teams in 3 locations or 3 continents will definitely expand our ability and our capacity to, you know, grow more lines rather than just having the one factory in Fremont that we had, you know, year.
Definitely will help.
Yeah. So, I mean, for Shanghai, it was incredible that the team built the factory in 11 months, but it took longer than building the factory. It took longer than that to actually reach volume production, high volume production. So it took about a year. When you put a factory in a new geography, in order for that factory to be efficient, you have to localize the supply chain. So there's no such thing as cut and paste. It does not exist. And that, you know, it would obviously be insane to do vehicle production in Europe but send vast numbers of parts from North America. That would be that would make the, you know, producing in Europe, for example, just crazy. You've got to localize the supply chain to have efficiency, and then you're moving as fast as your least lucky, least good supplier. Yeah, it's only the supply chains where you go like, you know, 3 or 4 layers deep. It's frankly, I feel at times that we are inheriting all force majeure on Earth. So if anything goes wrong anywhere on Earth, something happens to mess up the supply chain. So yeah, yeah.
I think the human capital growth, though, of having factory here, Berlin, Shanghai, Fremont, does allow us to maybe not exponentially grow, but well, hopefully
we are exponentially growing.
Yeah, hopefully maintain that exponential growth.
Yeah. So, yeah, it takes a while to hire all the people and train all the people to operate the factory. A factory is like a giant cybernetic collective, and you can't just hire 10,000 people and have it work instantly. It's not possible. I really encourage more people to get involved in manufacturing. I think, especially in the U.S., like this has just not been an area where all that many smart people have gone into. I think the U.S. has an overallocation of talent in finance and law. It's both a criticism and a compliment. I'm not saying we shouldn't have people in finance and law. I'm just saying maybe we have too many smart people in those arenas. Maybe.
Manufacturing's fun.
Yeah, manufacturing is great. It's a very interesting problem to solve, and obviously you can't have stuff unless someone makes it. That's how you get stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's go to the last investor question. Does Tesla plan to offer more services beyond FSD or high-speed connectivity as part of its subscription bundle going forward? What areas in particular present an opportunity?
Games.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of ideas on this, to be frank. Really, full self-driving is the main thing. Things are obviously headed towards, fully autonomous electric vehicle future. And I think Tesla is well positioned and frankly is the leader objectively in both of those arenas, electrification and autonomy. It's always tempting to try to find analogies, but with other companies or whatever. But really, the value of a fully electric autonomous fleet is insanely gigantic. Boggles the mind, really. So that will be one of the most valuable things that is ever done in the history of civilization.
Thank you very much. And now let's go back to analyst Q&A, please.
Thank you. As a reminder, to ask a question, you will need to press *1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question, press the # key. In the interest of time, we ask that you please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Our first question comes from Colin Rusch with Oppenheimer. Your line is open.
Thanks so much, guys. Can you speak to the attach rates for FSD so far and where you're targeting in terms of the subscription levels?
Yeah, it's not worth commenting on right now. It's not meaningful. We really need full self-driving.
Boring bonehead.
The beta to be widely available, so anyone who wants to get it. Otherwise, it would be pointless to read anything into where things are right now. Yeah.
Okay, and then just the follow-up there is about the cadence of the regulatory environment, keeping up with the technology. Are you seeing meaningful evolution in terms of the regulators really understanding the technology and beginning to set some standards here sometime in the near term?
At least in the U.S., we don't see regulation as a fundamental limiter. We've obviously got to make it work and then demonstrate that the reliability is significantly in excess of the average human driver for it to be allowed, for people to be able to use it without paying attention to the road. But I think we have a massive fleet, so it will be, I think, straightforward to make the argument on statistical grounds, just based on the number of interventions, or especially interventions that would result in a crash at scale. We think we'll have billions of miles of travel to be able to show that it is, the safety of the car with the autopilot on is, 100% or 200% or more safer than the average human driver. At that point, I think it would be unconscionable not to allow the autopilot, because the car just becomes way less safe. It'd be sort of like, if you take the elevator analogy, back in the day, you used to have elevator operators with like a big sort of switch that operate the elevator and move between floors. But that get tired or maybe drunk or something, or distracted, and every now and again somebody would be kind of shared in half between floors.
What state do we think will be first?
That's the situation we have with cars. Autonomy will become so safe that it will be unsafe to manually operate the car, relatively speaking.
Arizona's been pretty AV forward.
Obviously, we just get in an elevator, we press the button for which floor we want, and it just takes us there safely. And it would be quite alarming if elevators were operated by a person with a giant switch. That's how it will be with cars.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question, please.
Next question comes from Rod Lache with Wolfe Research. Your line is open.
Hi, everybody. Your cost of goods sold per vehicle is already down to the mid $37,000 range in the quarter. It's down $5,000 year over year, despite the inefficiencies that you talked about. And I know that a lot is going to change from here, just given how mix is going to evolve. But if you're successful on the structural pack and front and rear castings and the launch of the 4680 cell, can you just maybe give us a sense of what a successful outcome would look like maybe a year from now? Obviously, a lot has to go right, but just any kind of broad framework for us to think about.
Yeah, it's really difficult for us to make specific predictions. It's very difficult. I think we feel confident of say at least a 50% growth year over year next year, and maybe it's 100%, but that's you need a lot of crystal balls to figure out exactly what it's going to be, and it is literally impossible to make a specific prediction. But at least 50, maybe 100, something like that.
Okay. And maybe just separately from this, can you just clarify what the status is of some of the advances in battery manufacturing, things like dry cathode mixing that you talked about on Battery Day? What's the timeline? How are those evolving?
Was this guy not listening?
Yeah, we commented on it today already, actually.
Covered it.
In the facility at Cato, over 90% of the processes have demonstrated rate there, but we are limited by the unlucky few that have not, and that's what we're working on. One of them that Elon mentioned was running the full scale
glitch
cathode calendar. We're working through some improvements that we need to make to that equipment and to the actual raw material itself to not have those limitations. But again, it's an engineering problem. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. On the mixing side, we haven't actually really had any challenges specific to your question. And fundamentally, we're still happy with the dry process direction in terms of the factory footprint, complexity, utility consumption, space, and overall complexity simplification.
Yeah.
And the cost associated with everything that I just mentioned.
Yeah. And we don't overemphasize dry cathode. I mean, it is a, I don't know, maybe it's like 10 or 15% of the cost improvement or something like that. I don't know, 20% maybe over wet.
Oh, yeah, 10, closer to 10.
Yeah. So it's like just like people don't think like this is like the Messiah or something. Wet versus dry reduces. Dry is like 10% less cost than wet. So it's not, not 10%. Still nothing to sneeze at, especially if you're making, hundreds of gigawatt hours a year. But it's not the size, basically.
Yeah, it's more about the space in the factory.
Thank you very much. We can go to the next
drying
question,
area
please.
takes a large area.
Right, and eliminating the
Question
drying
from Pierre
requirement.
Ferragu with New Street Research. Your line is open.
And the energy that goes with it, etc.
Hey,
Exactly.
thanks very much for taking my question. I have another question actually on batteries, but on a slightly different angle. I was wondering how you're looking at your sourcing strategy for the 4680. You've talked a lot about all the work you're doing to develop your in-house production. But what about asking other battery manufacturers to do 4680 cells with their own technology, maybe less innovation than what you guys are lining up internally? And I was wondering if the first 4680 cells that we'll see on the road will definitely come from Tesla's own manufacturing lines, or whether they could be coming actually from outside suppliers as well. Now, have a quick follow-up.
Yeah, we are in fact working with our existing suppliers to produce 4680 format cells, and this is just a guess right now. But I see us sort of like consolidating around a 4680 nickel-based structural pack and for long-range vehicles, and then not necessarily a 4680 format, but some other format for iron-based cells. And so we right now we kind of have the Baskin-Robbins of batteries situation, where we have so many formats and so many chemistries that it's like we've got like 36 flavors of battery at this point.
That's funny.
This results in an engineering drag coefficient, where each variant of cell chemistry and format requires a certain amount of engineering to maintain it and troubleshoot, and this inhibits our forward progress. So it is going to be important to consolidate to just maybe ideally 2 form factors, maybe 3, but ideally 2, and then just one nickel chemistry and one iron chemistry, and so we don't have to troubleshoot so many different variants.
Yeah, and towards that end, we are engaging with the suppliers that we've had good partnerships with on 4680 designs to enable that simplification, and so far so good. They're working on, they're bringing their core competencies to bear on that. We're not mandating like what's going on inside, but it's been a good collaboration.
Yeah. And we do expect to see significant increases in supply from our existing suppliers, in addition to the cells that Tesla is making. So it's both. Sometimes I get questions from our cell suppliers of like, are we just gonna make all the cells ourselves? And we're like, no, please make as many as you possibly can and supply them to us. We have a significant unmet demand in stationary storage. Megapack is basically sold out through the end of next year, I believe.
Yeah.
We have a massive backlog in Powerwall demand. The demand of Powerwall versus production is an insane mismatch. Now, part of that problem is also the semiconductor issue. So we use a lot of the same chips in the Powerwall as we do in the car. So it's like, which one do you want to make, cars or Powerwalls? So we need to make cars, so therefore Powerwall production has been reduced. But as that semiconductor shortage is alleviated, then we can massively ramp up Powerwall production. I think we have a chance of hitting an annualized rate of 1 million units of Powerwall next year. Maybe,
wow.
Sort of on the order of 20,000 a week. But again, dependent on cell supply and semiconductors. But in terms of demand, I think there's probably demand for in excess of 1 million Powerwalls per year, and actually just a vast amount of megapacks for utilities. As the world transitions to a sustainable energy production, solar and wind are intermittent and by their nature really need battery packs in order to provide a steady flow of electricity. And when you look at all of the utilities in the world, this is a vast amount of batteries that are needed. That's why, long term, we really think, to sort of combine Tesla and suppliers need to produce at least 1,000 gigawatt hours a year, and maybe 2,000 gigawatt hours a year.
Okay, great, thank you. And I have a quick question. I know, Elon, you don't think it's meaningful today, but I'd be curious to know, if you have any stats about when you announced a new pricing on a FSD moving from 10 grand up front to 199 without the lock-in. I'd be curious to understand, how it affected behavior, and if you saw like a massive uptake in the service. And I'm not thinking about people looking at it as an FSD, but more, to try the most advanced version of Autopilot and to try it. So in the first days you've announced the pricing, have you seen like a very significant spike in the take rate? And can you give us a sense of how big it was?
Who knows what he'll say?
Okay, so you're asking, like, is the FSD take rate too expensive, and that's why we're doing subscription? Or I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly.
No, my question is from the time you announced like the subscription at the $199 per month, how much did like the take rate increase? Like the percentage of people who basically took the subscription as they bought a new car versus how it was when they had to pay 10 grand up front?
It's been days. How
this is Zach here. I mean, I think we're still early in understanding how FSD subscription will unfold, but a couple of data points here. So we took a look at our backlog to see, of customers in our backlog who have ordered FSD, did they cancel, presumably to go to subscription after they take delivery? And the level of cancellations there was not seeing cannibalization there. It's possible that changes, but that was also part of our pricing strategy at $99 and $199.
Yeah, I mean,
it's also part of our pricing strategy at $99 and $199.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any given price is going to be wrong, so we'll just adjust it over time as we see, the value proposition makes sense to people. So we're just really are not thinking about this a lot right now. We need to make Full Self-Driving work in order for it to be a compelling value proposition. Otherwise, people are, kind of betting on the future. I mean, right now, does it make sense for somebody to do an FSD subscription? I think it's debatable. But once we have Full Self-Driving widely deployed, then the value proposition will be clear. And at that point, I think basically everyone will use it. Or it could be a rare individual who doesn't.
Yeah, solve the first problem first.
Thank you very much for your help, and I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for all your questions, and we'll speak to you again in 3 months' time. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Rather concise today.
This concludes today's conference call. Thank you for participating.
Yeah, so you've heard it. It's we got a number of different points, and I wanted to start with Elon dropping out of the calls. I am, for one, very disappointed because, of course, when Elon talks, anything can happen. So I have a feeling that if his other staff is answering the questions, a lot of those questions are going to be answered with, "We're not answering at this point." I don't think anyone's going to step out of
earnings
line.
Call. Why are you asking me this BS?
Yeah, there will definitely be less interesting.
Yeah,
and that might be a good thing. That might be a good thing.
Because when we're sitting there listening to it, don't you guys? When there's a big pause, I am thinking anything could happen at this point. Like he could come out with a crazy answer, he could come out with something completely different, or he could say no comment. But if
he rarely says no comment,
if he's going to have people that are in his place, they're going to follow the normal corporate rules that you typically hear in a lot of earnings calls, where they indicate that there's no comment at this time, or that it would be taken under consideration, but at this point there's no comment.
Yeah, but he didn't say he would never attend. So
no, not never.
He said only if it's important. So then if we hear his voice, they're like, "Oh snap, what's going on?"
Right? Yeah. So maybe it's just to build drama. He'll just do every other one.
and the shareholders meetings.
Yes. Yeah. And some podcasts.
Yeah, he said I'll do one.
Hopefully he picks one that doesn't leave a bad taste in his mouth, because otherwise we're all out of the equation.
Well, I mean, he's done Joe Rogan, and he's done lots of different. MKBHD interviewed him. He's done lots of stuff, and I think he'll just continue to do that at least once a year. Yeah,
those are big pros. Those aren't Tesla shows. I mean, a lot of them are pro Tesla, but they're not Tesla shows.
Yeah, he did Ryan McCaffrey's show, the Ride the Lightning. Yeah, which is very a Tesla focused show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that changed anything about. He'll do them periodically when he has time.
Yeah.
When it fits his schedule. But if some factories lines down, he's going to be sleeping on the factory floor, not doing podcast interviews.
Right. I'm glad he didn't commit, because that would have been, like he said, his schedule's tight as it is.
Well, next, one of the items he talked about was answering a question, was about the superchargers.
Yeah.
So we discussed a little bit about this in our previous shows, but what was opened up here was something about time-based.
Time and an adapter.
Right.
They wanted to be conscious of how long that particular charger is in use, so that it's freed up for others to use. So it will be interesting to see how the app works with that. He indicated that a start with another vehicle would be using the Tesla app, plugging it in and indicating that you're at pump 2A, and it would then begin its charging cycle. But
2C.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see how that progresses. We thought that maybe there would be a possibility that the car would have to transmit information.
Well, that was my question. Is now if you have a compatible car like the Ford or the Volvo, and you plug them in, will they say, "Hey, I'm serial number 7, charge Suzy Q," or will it say, "Hey, now you got to open your app," even though there's no technical reason for you need to open the app?
Right.
Yeah, and my guess is they're going to do, the minimal viable product is you start with the app, and that's how it works. And then as more cars support plug and charge, and more people who are not driving Teslas join the network, then you add plug and charge support. But you don't need to start there.
When you sign up for the app and you say, "Hey, I've got a Ford Mustang," then it's going to say, "Oh, you can plug in just like the Teslas," because that's no work on their part. It automatically charges your Tesla account, comes right off your credit or debit card, rather than having to design the app interface. Because you can sign up on the website, and then you won't need an app. For the people today, you could run them today if they had a proper connection. Versus the others, you have to make the app.
Yeah, you have to add support for the whole plug and charge protocol to the supercharger network. You have to then set up the billing for it. And
if the Teslas today use plug and charge, then no, they don't. But if they don't, then you will.
The Teslas today have had this way before the IEEE standard for plug and charge was finalized. So it's going to be different.
Well, like all the other stuff they had was before it was standardized too, and they ended up using the exact same signaling and everything, just a different connector. So it's not impossible, is what I'm saying. It seems that might be low-hanging fruit if there's enough of them.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They'll get there. I just don't think it's the priority, because it's a small number of cars right now that do it. So you need to do it the other way. And if you're going to do it the other way, you might as well focus on getting that done first.
For everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
2 models.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So the next point with that was, I'm wondering now, are they going to have the inverse of what we have, where as you slow down, you pay more, rather than as you go faster, you pay more?
Right. That is
just to get them out, because you don't want a bolt sitting there at 50 kilowatts for 90 minutes.
Yeah, and there's still the difficulty. If this were in the U.S., some states you cannot sell electricity; you have to sell access.
Yeah.
And so that, I assume, would just be a fixed rate all the time, regardless of the energy rate. And then in places where you can sell electricity, but
so those
ahead.
states, they do it based on, so they have the ones where they can sell per kilowatt, and then they just charge you per kilowatt, and they charge you
Right.
differently if you can take the kilowatts faster. But then on the other ones, they basically charge you for parking.
Yes.
So you pay one rate for high speed, one rate for low speed, and then another is your idle fee, which is just ridiculously high to convince you to move.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other question in all of this was, where are they going to start? Which that was not answered.
Not California,
but they
Europe and China.
Yeah, because they're, like you said, they're already compatible with the plug.
They did say that there was going to be a problem with North America with the plug difference, right?
Yeah.
Elon said something about an adapter, doesn't want them to be stolen. I would think the easiest solution for that would be to just install some extra cables.
Yeah,
some CCS cables on selected superchargers. That would also keep the number of chargers down to a certain percentage that you'd be comfortable with, based on how many of those chargers are used on a regular basis too. So you could have a supercharger with 10 chargers, and 3 of them you would put CCS on the cable.
But then you've got all that expense of new cables. Not that they haven't done it before with Europe,
right?
But then you've also got the situation of some of these entitled Tesla owners that even though the station is full, they're going to use the compatible ones first, just to make sure that they don't have to share with riffraff.
That's a possibility. The other problem would be that everyone has to have an adapter. If you want to use the Tesla network, you've got to buy the $400 adapter.
Right, and then the cool thing with the adapter is then that solves the problem of worrying about the app, because then you can make your adapter work the exact same way your cars already work, assuming that you have the chips.
That would make a lot more sense, I think, because you could put whatever communication protocol you want in there. You then sign your adapter up to the Tesla network, and then you plug in whatever you want with it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you don't have to worry about people stealing them, because they're individual owners. They're theirs, and they lock into the car, so they can't.
And they will lock, because that's a requirement for DC charging, is that it lock. So
exactly, yeah. So
that
sounds like the better North American solution to me.
Yep. And then for rest of world, it's already there. You just got to, at that point, make the, like you said, do the app that way. It's like you said, Patrick, there's so many cars out there that don't currently support plug and charge. The app would be the least common denominator, even though the other way would be easier. You're looking at maybe 4 cars worldwide in mass production.
Maybe 4.
Is it that many? I only know of 2 off the top of my head, but yeah.
I think it's a different 2 in Europe.
Oh, okay.
And then the Mustang's in both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then outside of superchargers, another thing that was touched upon was the 4680 battery. And of course, a few questions came in on this about speed of deployment. A comment based on what Elon had said last quarter about them not being quite production ready. And the clarification was put out there that the battery is production ready. It's just the issue of getting the number of production pushed up higher to amount where it's meaningful. So you can definitely put out small amounts that are production ready and can go into vehicles, but they're trying to work on the issue of having several different factories punch these batteries out at a faster and faster speed to supply, all the cars. So it becomes a question of getting that machinery operating correctly. He talked about an issue they had with the top of the can being pushed down or pressed down during production. They also talked about the purchase of a bunch of machinery based on Cato Road, and they've had to iterate a little bit. And now that machinery that's being shipped to the other gigafactories, it's going to have to be modified slightly based on what they've discovered with the mass production. What they have to modify that equipment in order to achieve its goals.
Yeah, so it's a production ramp, just like we saw with Model 3, just except that hopefully this time it's not risking the company.
Right. Yeah. It's really smart of them to do this in a pilot plant, and they are working out all the bugs here, and then when they install them in Germany and Texas, they're not stumbling over these on a bigger scale.
And this was also in connection with his comments about not being able to copy and paste factories, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that was something he thought he could do initially from the Giga 1 presentation.
Right.
And then the other point that I took notice is that they're not holding back production of the Model Y. Once the factory's ready to go, there may be a hybrid model that the Model Y contains not a structural pack. It may contain a pack currently that they're using, as well as adding the elements of the one-piece front or the one-piece back or both. But obviously their goal is to have a structural pack and the one-piece front and the one-piece back. But he said they're not going to slow down if they have to move forward with one or the other missing in a current iteration. That will just be added after the fact as they get comfortable with that process.
I'm surprised that they aren't going to do a structural pack with the 2170s if it comes down to that, because they've already got the cells, and from the way he described the structural pack, once it doesn't really matter what's inside once you add your adhesive, assuming that the cooling will work with the smaller cells.
That might be it.
Yeah, because the 4680s are going to use one end for cooling, not both, and not the long side.
Yeah, so maybe it is a cooling issue that would prevent them from doing that.
Yeah, you can still glue them in.
Yeah, still glue them in, but
might not be as rigid, so maybe that also would affect it as well.
Right,
yeah.
And then that leads us into our next point, which was Powerwall.
Oh yes.
Batteries supplied tower, they're definitely constrained. We heard a story recently about them having orders for 80,000 and only be able to ship 20,000.
And then the Megapack is sold out.
Yeah, and the Megapack sold out for a year plus into the future. So he mentioned about ultimately they believe that the Powerwall is going to be selling 1 million units a year, with about 20,000 being, I think he said 20,000 per week, adds up to that million.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So obviously the demand far outweighs what they can produce at this point. And I'm just thinking, okay, with that many Powerwalls just sitting, that's extra income that's just sitting there ready to be grabbed. Once they get the manufacturing down for the 4680s going into the cars, then that's going to free up a bunch of 2170s that are currently being made at the Panasonic installation at Gigafactory Nevada. Yeah. So that will be a big boost. And he talked a little bit about the chip shortage as well, affecting power packs as well as cars. Yeah. So they're using some of that same infrastructure in the chip and the boards in both the cars and the Powerwalls, which makes complete sense.
And he called out Powerwall, but not the Power Pack or the Mega Pack. I'm curious then if they use different chips, or if it's just because they're already sold out that they've already got their allocation. Because they basically just use multiple Powerwall sets, because the Powerwall has two banks of cells, and then the Power Pack is just 10 up to 10 Powerwalls guts, and then the Mega Pack is several Power Packs in an array in a shipping container.
Yeah, well, it would make sense that it is modular like that, because that would allow them to produce one pack and it slides into multiple units. Either they're on its own in a wall or into a Mega Pack or into a power another device. So having those sleds being able to load it into whatever you're using would certainly make sense. But those, I believe they are 2170s, right?
They're all
2170s.
They're all 2170s.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, if you need one chip per unit, you can maybe do one Powerwall or one Power Pack instead of having.
Yeah, there may be some economies of scale when you get them into packs and Mega Packs.
Yeah,
definitely.
So I like the cells, but you don't have the chips, and the Power Pack sells for more.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I just
like
like the idea that they have this fungibility, so they can order
Yeah.
a lot of batteries, and then they're going to prioritize vehicles. But if they, for whatever reason, don't have the parts, or the lines are down, or whatever, then those can just go right into these other products.
Yeah.
And the other products, if they have to wait, 6 months before they can start selling power walls, then so be it, because they're battery constrained for vehicles and they're going to that. So it's nice that they have that fungibility.
Yeah, especially that point he pointed out about putting iron in the cars, except for the ones that need the range or the power. So those are going to be high nickel. So yeah, so basically your Model 3 standard range and your Model Y standard range are going to be running on Powerwall batteries.
Yeah,
higher nickel, higher iron content.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing with those comments made was that obviously the cars are still taking number one spot in Elon's mind.
Yes.
They are battery constrained. That continues to happen. If they are chip or battery or whatever, it goes to the cars first. That's what their number one priority continues to be, which makes sense.
It does.
Because they're probably making a higher margin on the overall product.
Yep, and then you get a lot more visible, angry customers whose cars are delayed than some construction project that's been delayed by 6 months because A, the power wall is late, and B, lumber shot up to something ridiculous and is also back ordered for wood.
But I'm sure that there are a lot of people after the power, the grid problems that Texas has had, that they want power walls. I mean, if you're losing power in the summer because too many people are running their AC. You're losing power in the winter because the grid isn't winterized, and these freak winter weather events are happening more often. We've entered a stage of global weirding, and so oh my God, it's 100-year event, and they seem to happen every year. Yes,
all-time high, new low.
So if you think next summer people aren't going to be using as much electricity for AC, you're wrong. It's just there are going to be more people installing AC and more people using AC. And the grid stress is going to be there. I've been running on batteries for the last 55 minutes just because we do that every day during peak time to do peak shaving, and
well, you make a good point, Patrick. In your situation where air conditioning was not as imperative because of where you lived at one point, it's starting to have an impact where you live. So there's only so many years you will suffer through maybe where your current air conditioner can't keep up. And at some point down the road, you will decide, you know what, I'd rather be comfortable, and you will spend money on getting a larger air conditioning system, which of course will use more power.
Yeah, exactly. Only about half the homes here have AC because most of the time you don't need it. And then you look at someplace like Seattle, only about a third of the homes have AC. And I'm guessing that is going to be significantly more next year.
And the ones that have it don't necessarily have an appropriately sized unit because
they're underpowered.
And they only needed 2 rooms, and now they need the whole house.
Yep.
So that's interesting. And another point that was brought up was the combination of the batteries. Okay, so they mentioned the 1,000,000-mile battery.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
So that Battery Day, they never quite said it, but this time they did. We got it.
Yes. So obviously that's still in their thinking, which is fantastic, because that battery, I believe, will open up a lot of doors, and it could also become rolling into the virtual power plant thought that has been going on, that Tesla has introduced now in California, where people can sign up for the virtual power plant, because your walled battery is about 13.5 kilowatts. But your Model 3 long range is 77 kilowatts. So if you had a 1,000,000-mile battery pack that you weren't concerned about it being drawn down and used in that fluctuation, a vehicle to grid onto a power plant, virtual power plant, would be a huge win for someone that's not using their car at that time.
Yeah, and Terry in the chat brings up a good point that all the volume manufacturers already know how to make lithium iron. phosphate batteries. So this is right up their alley. Just fill it in a cylindrical can instead of a prismatic cell.
Yes, yeah, and every year the batteries get a little more efficient, and now we're at the point where the iron batteries are as good as the cobalt batteries were from whatever 5 or 7 years ago, and that allows them to be used in vehicles in ways that in the past they would have just been only viable for stationary products.
Yeah, and they're more tolerant, so you can do near zero to near full.
The higher charging, yep.
For longer,
Yep, full cycles and heat. They don't care. They're honey badger batteries.
Right, and so that will be helpful for a car that has a lesser range, but at the same time you don't have to have that same rule of thumb, like, oh my goodness, it's so delicate, it's a lithium battery, I got to make sure I got to keep it in the yellow, and I got to make sure I don't get above 90%. Like,
right.
It's like, hey, you're going on a trip, fill it up. If you're not going on a trip, keep it at 95, 90%. Whatever.
Yeah, if you don't leave when you thought you would, it wouldn't matter because you can leave it at 100%.
Exactly.
Right, you don't have to worry about staying in the 80-20. Just do 0 to 100. Boom.
Right. Well, you wouldn't want to do 0 because you want to be able to make sure you make it to the charger. But
yeah.
You don't have to feel bad about getting into the red. Like on mine, it's like if I see yellow, I start looking for charging. But if I'm in the red, I'm like, oh, it's not going to stay in the red and parked.
Right.
I'm going to plug it in.
Yes. Get the juice.
So, those were the main points I jotted down during. How about you guys? Is there anything I missed or you wanted to comment on as well?
Definitely the analysts with the whole Elon not being there, so they'll have to ask normal questions. But the question then is with them being able to speak their same language between them and the CFO, will they still have the same roller coaster on earnings for Tesla, or it'll be more boring even for them?
Yeah.
Because obviously they already don't understand what's going on, and half of them were clearly not listening to what came before.
Yeah, like the
same question
one question where we commented on, was this guy listening?
Yeah, right.
Because he just repeated a question that was answered
minutes before,
not 5 minutes ago. So it's almost like they're on hold to do their question and they're not listening to the earnings call.
Right.
They're just sitting listening to the music on hold because that question was silly.
Yeah, but we know it's not because of the way they give us the instructions in the beginning about how to ask your question and raise your hand, etc.
Oh yeah.
And then Cybergrade brought up a point that they are obsessed with full self-driving, as if the company will fail without it. And it is full self-driving is only going to be robotaxis replacing Uber and Lyft. You've got the Boring Company. You've got all of the Tesla Energy products and all the other AI stuff that's going to spin off of this. Full self-driving is gravy and icing or whatever you want to call it. It's not required to make the company succeed, other than the amount of people they'll have to pay back.
But it is a multiplier.
It is.
Like it's something that I understand why the analysts are asking about it, but what they don't understand is you have to solve the first problem first.
Right.
The product has to be done and operational and completely useful for the public to buy into it, to start spending that rate per month.
Yes.
which I believe will go up anyways. I don't think it's going to stay at $199.
Right.
I think it's going to go up. So
but once it's more useful, more people will be willing to pay whatever the new rate is.
Yeah, they talked about, as that actually rolls out, they talked about that the price would reflect that.
Yeah. And Elon even agreed with most of the owners out there. Like, if you've got enhanced autopilot, what are you getting for $100 a month other than stoplight control and the ability to use it off of the freeway? So, I mean, it's not completely worthless. I mean, I've got it, but it's not to the point where he sees it being a major input into the income until he can give them more of what was advertised.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the reason that I think the analysts ask the questions that they do is they're always trying to fill out their model for next quarter. So that's their focus.
That's all they care about is 3 months. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters to
next
them.
Year doesn't matter, even though that's like what we're building for.
Right. I want to be able to put out my price target, and that means I need to know the take rate right now of how much money you're going to make on FSD over the next 3 months, which to retail long-term investors is irrelevant. I did like the way in the Say questions, the question was 5 years from now, what do you think?
Yes.
And then in the retail, and then the financial advisors, theirs was at most 1 year. So
what's going to happen for the next 2 weeks, Elon?
Yeah, they have a completely different goal.
Calendar 2 weeks, not Elon 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. So there was one thing I did want to cover, and let me share that window here.
Absolutely.
Let
And then you had
me
some pictures
know.
to share with us too.
Yeah. So
And then
they
Mark,
did
Mark had
not
one as well.
cover
Zoom on us.
as much of this as I thought they would, but
Same.
yeah, I can't. I'm gonna have to go to the other screen so I can read it. Okay.
Control scroll.
Right. So can you see what I'm highlighting here?
Yeah, zoom it in more, please. You got a lot of
Okay.
space on the sides. There we go. That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So profitability, 28.4% GAAP automotive gross margin, or almost 26%, excluding credits. So even without the credits, they have almost a 26% GAAP gross margin on their vehicles.
And
So
Gap is what those analysts want to hear anyway, so that's perfect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So,
And
Gap, they're doing it the generally acceptable way to do accounting, not some shenanigan way of, oh, well, we ignore the things that look bad and add these other things,
Well, that's always the argument they had whenever Tesla didn't do it, but they were always just saying we're just cutting out leasing because.
Right.
Yeah. But the other cool thing to point out, I'm sorry to interrupt you before you continue.
No, go ahead.
That 28.4% is 3.4% higher than their target.
That's that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that the credits here make a 3% difference, or a 2.6% difference. So even if the tax credits go away completely, that doesn't change the picture, which is always one of the Tesla's only profitable because of their credits that they get, and as soon as other automakers start making EVs, that's all going to go away. Well, here you go. If it all went away, it would make a 2.6% difference.
Elon always says
deal.
every call, he's like, "Hey, don't worry about the credits. We're not counting on them, but they're bonus money."
Right.
It's proven. It's bonus money.
Yeah. Here's our proof. The other cool thing, and just to highlight a few things, is that they paid off a huge amount of debt. 1.6 billion in debt and finance lease repayments. So when the company was, let's say, there was more of a chance that they wouldn't be successful, then you don't get as good of financing. And so now it's pretty clear that they are profitable. They're continuing to be profitable. They're continuing to make new records. And so they're able to get much better deals. So you pay off the debt that's at higher rates. And if you need to have new debt, you can take it out at a better rate. So that was another good one from the letter here.
Exactly.
There's some cool pictures in this. I don't know if you guys have looked at it.
They did indicate also that they were actually talking from Gigafactory Texas, right? They were they were in there doing the earnings call.
You can hear a little bit of echo too, yeah.
Yeah,
I was on a ferry, so I haven't seen any pictures yet.
Okay. Yeah, so here's Giga Berlin looking pretty complete.
Yes.
Yeah. The Berlin paint shop.
Oh, look at that.
You did say it'd be advanced.
Man, that looks like a scene out of iRobot.
Yes.
It does.
Where they painted that Audi.
Yeah, it's just going to start coming down this line, and each robot applying their code on there. And Giga Texas.
There
Texas.
we go.
Yes.
Yeah, so on the left is 6 months ago, and on the right is present
it's a
day.
swamp field. Yes, it's didn't that happen?
Yep. That's where they were calling from, somewhere in this building.
Yes. Now, I wonder if they took the pictures or if they just borrowed it from one of the drone armies.
I think they can afford a drone.
I mean, I know they can afford it, but he said that rather than ask his crew, he just logs on and sees the Starbase.
Exactly. Just go into YouTube and you've got a bazillion pictures to pick from.
Yes. Right, yeah. What day do you want? We've got, do you want morning, afternoon,
what hour
evening?
do you want?
Yeah. So here is the Giga Texas stamping press.
So is this a Cybertruck stamping press or a Model Y stamping press?
That is a very good question.
Well, they indicated as well during this call that Model Y is number one. That is what's leading first.
You You can do number one and still get the other one done.
Yeah, you can work on the other one, but production of Model Y is going to be before Cybertruck, and that's been an open question for a while. And
It has.
and actually, some of the people out there have been flip-flopping back and forth as to which one it is, but they made it clear during this call.
Right.
For
They
now.
clearly answered that until they changed their mind. I
Yes.
like the caveat Casey's put in there. Yeah.
But even so, if he said that the Model Y is going to be their best seller, so why not focus on what you feel is going to be your best sales? I mean,
Yes.
the Cybertruck, even though it competes in price with the Model Y, it's a ginormous vehicle. There's only going to be so many people who want something that looks like that and moves like that and takes up that much footprint.
Right. That, and they already know how to make the Model Y. They don't have to
Yes.
figure it out. So
It's not exactly copy and paste, but it's close.
right. They have a lot of experience with it. And like Mark said, if they can't go to structural battery pack, well, they already know how to do the existing battery pack. So do that until you get the other one figured out. If the stamping isn't working perfectly, okay, well, now we do 2 parts instead of 1, and we can do that, and we can make the vehicles and deliver them.
Exactly.
I wonder how that will affect anybody who floats between factories if they're not as identical as possible. Will there be a learning curve every time you move between factories?
Might be a little bit, but I would imagine that there's not a lot of people that are on the line that will be moving.
Yeah.
You know, you may get supervisors or people
Right.
that are higher up the chain.
And they would
But,
get corrected by any line manager. Hey, no, we
Yeah.
don't do things like that around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you're one of the robot engineers that troubleshoots difficult problems. Okay, well, you're looking at all the details of everyone all the time anyway. So yeah, you can float pretty
Exactly.
easily.
Oh, and here's the roof crew.
Yeah.
Is that Texas still?
Yes, this is Texas.
Okay.
Yep. Model Y factory construction.
I
Pretty
bet you
cool.
Model Y is just that module, that one straight line.
Yeah, these factories are like a mile long. It's incredible. And when you're designing it from scratch, you can make it so that it just goes down. Parts come in one end, cars come out the other, and it's just a straight shot all the way instead of the zigzag thing that they've had to do at Fremont.
But they have Fremont, absolutely. That's another thing to mention. Fremont, Elon commented on Twitter that Fremont would resume factory tours in a couple months.
Good.
So factory tours have been shut down for quite some time. If you ever get a chance to take in a factory tour, I would highly suggest it. It's a great experience.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Have you done one, Casey?
I haven't made it out to California yet.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you'll only have to go to Texas.
I'm definitely going to try to get my hands on the Texas tour.
Cool. Here's Giga Shanghai. Their expansion continues. The one that Casey said would win, and we all went, yes, you win. And I think that was it for the photos. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, impressive.
Yes. So how well or poorly will we do tomorrow in the stock market?
So after hours, I looked, and it was already up $7 or $8. So the market seemed to like what they saw in that. So I don't know if anything has changed since the call. That was from the newsletter that we just looked at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
no stock advice here, but
they beat Wall Street, estimates. So my guess is the stock drops tomorrow. That's the way it goes.
It goes that way.
It's only if they miss their targets that the price will go up. It's a topsy-turvy world on Wall Street.
No, because if they miss the target, it goes down hard.
So the market is always trying to look 3 to 6 months out, right? So it's not about whether they made last quarter, it's what they project for next quarter. So that's why you often
bonehead questions.
yes.
They're trying to read the tea leaves.
They're only looking that far out. That's what they're trying to figure out. And so it doesn't. There is this weird, what did they say now versus what is that going to mean later?
Yeah, and they're just as bad as Microsoft at saying one thing and you have to parse what it means.
Yes, yeah. Like there's weird things like, our recommendation is a buy, okay, yesterday it was a strong buy, so you've downgraded it, which really means it's a sell, but you don't want to upset them, so it's not. Yeah. So
there's them, yeah, but I meant listening to the company here, Tesla. When Tesla and Elon speak, they are very deliberate in their answers, and so same with Microsoft. Like they'll say one thing, and then you have to go back and you have to read it 8 different ways, and then decide what it means. And here it's only 4 different ways, but still.
Yeah, that is one thing that with Musk gone, it's going to be a little more boring.
Yeah, because you just never know what will happen when Elon's answering a question. But I'm pretty sure what will happen if the others are answering a question. They're going to stay between the lines. There's going to be no humming or hawing or reading the 8 ball. That is not going to happen with the other guys.
It would be nice to hear more from Zach Kirkhorn and Drew. So that one upside is that those guys will get more airtime.
Yeah, there is no PR team. So the question then is, if they say we have to get back to you on that, is that going to be you wait 3 months, or is that going to be that they finally open up their Twitter, or will there be an announcement on the IR page? Because they are very regulated in how they answer these questions that they come back after the call, since they have to be equitable for everybody.
Well, as Patrick, as you've said, and I certainly agree with it, I think that some of the others that are behind Elon, I think they've got to start stepping up into their roles where they're responsible, or they are responsible as it sits, but I think that they have to, it's almost like they have to take over those roles in a more public way. That they're the ones speaking for those departments or those projects, or it's just tough when Elon's the only spokesperson out there.
This is what they need, though, because like at SpaceX you've got Gwen, and at Tesla you've got Elon, and so it'd be nice if the people who are actually titled with what their role is, that they could actually speak to what their job is.
Yeah, like before Jerome exited, I was hoping he was going to be there as one of those figures. But I think some of these others are going to have to start taking those roles as the company grows. I think it becomes more and more apparent that those type of roles are required.
Yeah, and that's really what Musk should be spending more of his time doing, is building out a C-suite of people that can do that so that he does not have to. And it's also succession planning. It's that is his responsibility, and I don't think he's done a great job of that.
He seems to be the opposite of a micromanager, and that's not good.
Yeah,
right. And he says he wants to spend his time doing engineering. Well then you need other
seems to be
people.
Micromanager. Yes. So in the chat, we've got a question. They wanted to know if there will be a difference between Model Y made in Texas versus Fremont. And I'm going to say probably not, but there will be a difference in the way in which they're built with his whole copy paste statement.
Yeah,
I think there'll be subtle differences as time goes along until the other lines start to catch up with the newest line or with the newest thinking of what the line should be. So I think there will be subtle differences in all the factories until they get set and dialed in that this is the patent, this is the one that we want to use going forward, and then update all the others to match that.
Yeah, so I think for the end user, the customer, you won't see any real difference as far as how it behaves.
Yeah, there'll be these crazy Twitter conversations about people saying that, I got a one-piece front end, and I got a one-piece back
rear
end. And I got the first structural pack. Who cares, really? Like, the car is warranted. It has to work in the proper way, and whether you have a structural pack, who cares? Like, eventually, it will get there, but there'll be some hybrids before we get there.
Yeah. Right, and this is one of the things the Sandy Munro teardowns have taught us, is that when Tesla has an improvement, they roll it out in production. And it's not like, we're going to wait for the next model year and then we're going to make these 20 improvements. It's no, we have an improvement now, it's going out now, and then 3 months later there'll be another one, and then 2 weeks after that there'll be another one. So all those vehicles that come off the line during those windows are slightly different. Yeah. And we've even seen this with Shanghai.
It's just 3 months.
Right. Yeah. So some of the improvements rolled out in Shanghai first. and then went to Fremont.
And the other way around as well, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that whatever team comes up with the innovation, they're going to pilot it, and when it's they see that it's working, then it's going to go to the other spots. So yeah, they'll be mix and match all over the place.
Yeah. And then Terry brings up a good point about the paint shop that we saw in the photos.
Yeah.
Do we think that Texas will get that? And I think they will, because if you're starting from scratch, why not have your advanced paint shop? Yeah.
Unless, I don't think that Berlin has any special sauce that's not going to be shared with everywhere else once they get it dialed in. So if they believe that Berlin is a next generation paint shop, of course they're going to put that into Texas.
Yeah, and Elon touched on it on previous calls. He said that the reason they're not putting it in right away in Fremont is you have to shut the whole building down because the way the paint shop is laid out in Fremont. So
they're certainly constructed on space in Fremont. So it becomes a question of you don't want to slow down production.
No, you'll have to build up a backlog of S and X, and then you'll have to make sure that Y and 3 are coming out of other factories, and then you can shut down Fremont for a month or a couple weeks to change the entire paint shop out. Yeah,
to rip out the paint building and put a new one in. Yeah.
Right, but we won't see that until after Berlin and Texas are up and running.
100%, and then the new Shanghai will also have to be
at
100% as well, because shutting down Fremont for them is going to be a major investment.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but the paint shop has always been a problem for them there, because when they bought the place, it was already a brownfield because of the paint shop.
Right. Yeah, the Cybertruck don't care about paint shop.
Yeah. So while the Fremont paint shop is down, they could definitely be making Cybertrucks there on the pilot line.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I don't think Fremont will ever make a Cybertruck.
But they said they would try it, didn't they?
I think they're there on a test line, and I don't even think it's at Fremont. I think it's in an adjacent property they own. Kind of like Cato. Yeah. But I'd be surprised if Fremont started to make a Cybertruck, because I don't think they're going to. But
I don't think they'll be doing it at any volume. Like I said in previous calls, it's gonna make sense for them to have backups for their backups, because he keeps talking about the force majeures. So if you're geographically able to do all the products, even if they don't belong there, you don't want to ship the Cybertruck across the ocean.
I have a feeling that's going to be taken up by a new plant that's going to be placed somewhere in the Northeast or
Oklahoma.
North Central.
All of a sudden, Buffalo starts actually building cars for some reason.
That would be cool. I would like Buffalo to get that.
Yes.
I am sure there's problems with the amount of space in that current location, but I would love to see Western New York get something like that to help supply the Northeast and Canada.
Yeah, I think currently
if not, they can cross the border. I have no problem with that either.
Oh, there you go. Because I think right now Buffalo is backed by Sparks, right? And Sparks backs Buffalo backs Sparks for whatever little overlap they have. Because for a while Sparks was building everything for energy, and now it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when we did our prediction show for this year, one of the things that I said is I think we're going to hear announcements for at least one, maybe two of their next Gigafactory locations, and we're halfway through the year, and we haven't heard yet.
We know it's not India, because Elon said let's wait and see.
Right.
So the good thing there, though, is that he hasn't said no to India getting a Gigafactory. He just wants to see what the demand will be.
Right, when they start delivering in that. So they'll be installing service centers and showrooms, but no plans for a factory yet.
And the continual of the supercharger road between Europe and the Silk Road.
Yes. Well, that makes sense, though. I mean, if India does as well as it can, then you'll have your two largest countries will have their own Gigafactory between China and India. So
right.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that India has regions around it that can be serviced to help reduce costs.
Definitely, and there are some regions in that area that really don't like receiving Chinese cars.
Yes.
So receiving
like
them from India would be a plus, and
Yes.
vice versa. So it would be a nice, if the demand is there, it would be a good addition. But definitely want to see another another factory in North America. Well, with that, guys, do you think we should wrap up? Is there anything else you wanted to touch upon?
You see all these obelisks aligned to true north.
I think we've covered it. This was a
no more questions in chat.
Great announcement.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
For those that are still with us, please give us a thumbs up at this point. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that as well. You can follow us through the week, and there's going to be a lot of articles coming out. So
Yes.
we'll be publishing those through our Twitter feed at The Tesla Life and our Facebook, The Tesla Life #1. I certainly want to thank Casey and Patrick for joining us today in this off regular day as we covered the earnings call on Monday. I will let you know that we're not going to have our regular show on Wednesday because this, of course, has taken that place. So we got the show out this week. We want to give Casey a break. He's on vacation. So and Patrick's on vacation too. So
you're right. I am. Yeah.
They both joined us on their vacation day. So we're going to let it go the rest of the week. They can enjoy themselves. And we will catch you the following Wednesday. And at that point, find out what is going on in the Tesla Life.
So over here, I want to thank Palmer House Inn for providing me space and internet. And I don't have the soundtrack because I didn't bring that device. So I want to thank Lee Moon anyway.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I will catch Lee Moon on the next one.
We hear Lee Moon all the time. So we still want to thank him regardless.
Exactly.
Patrick, any shout outs at the end of the show?
Oh, yep. So I'm with carswithcords.net. You can check out my blog there. And I just want to say, hey, everybody, we are here to help bring about a future free from fossil fuels.
Ooh!
Yes.
And Casey, what's that YouTube page for others to follow?
YouTube.com/Casey Green, as spelled right here in my hand. If you're on the podcast, then you already know how to spell my name because you're on the website. But I've done a couple of fresh supercharger reviews. They're in my camera still. And then I've got a copy of my rough cut of the deep dive into 2021.4.18.2. It said cold weather improvements and minor fixes. There was a lot of stuff in there, and I've got over an hour of footage I need to cut down further and make it nice for you guys because even though it's not the current version anymore, some folks are getting newer versions, and I think that for the folks that are into what I provide with the deep dives, you'll be impressed with the amount of difference that you can get with minor fixes.
I want to know. I'm curious. I will be checking it out.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, with that, everyone, have yourselves a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.